So if you're here for navigating team dynamics, building respect and collaboration, you are in the right place. Welcome to this HCET webinar. And next slide, Minju, please. So we're just going to go over a couple of things. We are recording this today, so thank y'all for keeping yourselves on mute when you're not speaking. You do have the option of closed captions as well. You can find that on the bottom, click it, play with your subtitles if you need to. Next slide, please, Minju. And then instead of Q&A actually today, because this is just a regular Zoom meeting, if you have a question or if you want to comment on something, please just use the chat. There will be a chance for us to have a little bit of a discussion and reflection in this, so we appreciate you using the chat for that. Thank you. Next, please, Minju. Oh, there we go. Easy peasy. This is just HCT. We are healthcare education and training. If you want to follow us on any of our social media platforms, we do a lot of training related to reproductive and sexual health. Slide, please, Minju. Okay, so now I get to do the exciting part. I get to introduce our presenter today. We are so excited to have her. So, Dr. Minju Witte is a professional development consultant and the founder of Empower Etiquette. So, she's a sought-after keynote speaker. She helps leaders, companies, and organizations strengthen workplace communication, executive presence, and build trust in professional relationships. She's a licensed business etiquette consultant trained by the Emily Post Institute, and Minju holds a bachelor's and a master's degree in piano performance from the Juilliard School and doctorate from Stony Brook University. Minju spent 15 years as a college professor where she developed expertise in high-stakes communication, decision-making, and leadership presence, skills she now applies to executive coaching and consulting. Born in South Korea and raised in Indiana, Minju lives in Indianapolis with her husband. And now I'm really excited to turn it over to you, Minju. Go ahead and do your best.
Thank you so much, Adele. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Great. Well, thank you. Thank you to everyone for being here. It's truly a privilege to be with you today. My wish for this session is that it simply offers a pause for you, a chance to step back from just daily pace to reflect and to re-engage with what steadiness and respect look like in the context of your work. So it isn't about adding more to your plate at all. We'll be focusing on team dynamics today, not from a corrective lens, but a relational one. I had the opportunity to have a session with your CEOs last month. So because even small shifts in how we communicate, respond, and carry ourselves can change how a team functions. In trauma-informed environments, especially like how we show up, verbally, non-verbally, behaviorally, shapes not just workflow, you know this, but the overall tone of your workplace. So I'm really glad to be here with you. Just a quick note, I've got a bit of a cold today. So if you hear a cough or snivel, thank you for your patience. Let's get started. So I want to give you a quick sense of where we're headed today for the next hour. We'll begin by exploring how civility supports trust and emotional safety, and how even small, consistent actions will make a meaningful difference. Then we'll move into workplace etiquette, not the stuffy kind, but real expectations that help teams run more smoothly, especially across different roles and personalities. So in our third section, we'll walk through how to handle difficult situations. This is my favorite section, with 2 short workplace scenarios and a simple 5-step method for responding thoughtfully. We'll also do a quick comparison with something that you already know, the PDSA cycle, to show how this communication tool can complement what you already use in healthcare. And then finally, we'll close by addressing generational and work style differences, a big factor in team dynamics. We'll look at how to spot tensions early and bridge gaps respectfully. So my goal is to keep this practical and immediately useful, simple tools to support your teams and to protect your own energy, especially in the kind of work that you do every day. So When we think about civility in trauma-informed workplaces, we're not talking about being nice, right? We're talking about creating an atmosphere that helps people feel safe, steady, and respected. So for teams working in environmentally intense settings like public health clinics, field work, or care coordination, civility becomes a protective factor. It lowers the emotional load, makes interactions more predictable, and allows everyone to be able to focus on the work itself. These behaviors are foundational to our psychological safety, a principle at the heart of trauma-informed care. When staff feel safe with one another, they take more initiative, they collaborate more freely, and they're more resilient under pressure. Psychological safety, I spoke about this with your CEOs, means people feel safe speaking up, right? Asking for help or admitting a mistake without fear of being blamed or dismissed. And civility is what makes that possible. So what happens when it's missing? Rudeness at work isn't just unpleasant, it's expensive. These numbers come from SHRM's 2025 Civility Index. So when people feel dismissed or disrespected, it adds up mentally, emotionally, and financially. So in fact, $2.1 billion is lost every day in the US to reduced productivity and absenteeism. That means missing work, arriving late, leaving early, calling out unexpectedly, not just because of illness, but because people are emotionally burnt out or avoiding tension. And that's not just an HR issue, it's a systems issue. 77% of employees say they've experienced or witnessed incivility in the past month. On average, workers report 1.25 uncivil acts per day. That may sound small, but in trauma-informed settings, those moments have weight. These aren't just interpersonal glitches. They affect how people show up, how much they give, and whether they stay. So again, this isn't about etiquette for the sake of etiquette. It's about protecting your team's emotional bandwidth so that they can keep doing the real work without friction wearing them down. So before we dive into this next data slide, I want to ground it in your experience. Think of a time when you held back. Maybe you just didn't speak up or you second guessed yourself because of someone's tone or dismissive comment or just that subtle thing that only you know, but it's hard to describe. Just notice how that felt, what it did to your focus, your motivation, or your trust. Now let's look at what the research shows when these behaviors go unchecked. These numbers come from organizational behavior researchers Porath and Pearson. They say that 48% of people intentionally reduce their effort after experiencing incivility. 47% spend less time at work, arriving late or leaving early. 38% deliberately lower the quality of their work. And then 12% actually leave their jobs entirely because of persistent rudeness. These numbers show that incivility doesn't just sting. It drives people to disengage, pull back, and in some cases, walk away completely. You may have had personal experiences with this. When we model civil behavior consistently, it's not just about being polite. It becomes the foundation of psychological safety. And in trauma-informed environments like yours, that kind of safety isn't optional. It's what helps people regulate, stay grounded, and continue to show up, especially in hard moments. You may never hear someone say, gosh, thanks for being civil today, right? Nobody says that, but they'll feel it, and that's what matters. Let's look at how one moment of rudeness often triggers a full cycle reaction unless we interrupt it. So this is what we don't talk about, how One small moment of incivility doesn't just stay small, it sets off chain reaction. So it often starts with stress and frustration. Someone's overwhelmed, short on time, or under pressure, which in public health happens all the time. And that stress then spills out as uncivil behavior, a dismissive tone, a snapped response, being ignored in a hallway. And while it may seem unintentional, it lands. The person on the receiving end responds with avoidance and resentment. They pull back, they stop engaging, or carry a quiet frustration. And that's where the real damage starts to build. Eventually, the ripple reaches the team as a whole. There's reduced trust. People stop asking questions, hesitate to collaborate, or just show up on autopilot. And then the cycle restarts. More stress, more withdrawal. But here's the good news. Every time you choose to be aware of your tone, to pause before reacting, or to check in with a teammate, you interrupt the cycle. That's leadership. That's trauma-informed care in action. We've just seen how rudeness can ripple through a team. This slide shifts our focus to the opposite, what civility looks like in action. These behaviors may seem simple, like duh, but practiced consistently, they create emotional steadiness, especially in high-stress environments. For example, being aware of your tone and body language, or pausing before responding may seem small, but they are strong cues of warmth and competence. So before we shift into the next section on workplace etiquette, I want to give you a moment to pause and please share it in your chats with each other. What is one small action you could take today to model civility where you work? All right, in the next section, we're going to talk about why workplace etiquette still matters. Workplace etiquette isn't about following old-fashioned rules. It's about creating clarity, how we speak, how we show up, or how we engage with one another. Number one, it helps others feel steady in unpredictable environments. When expectations are clear, people can relax, right? They know what to expect. They're not guessing how they will be treated. Number two, it communicates respect through small, consistent behavior. It tells others, you can count on me to show up in a grounded way. And number three, it builds team trust and personal professionalism. It protects team energy, right? Professional behavior keeps unnecessary friction low and creates space for everyone to focus on the work, not on recovering from a rough interaction, which can literally ruin your whole day. Ultimately, etiquette is about relationships. It helps us lead by example in a way that's steady, especially when people are overwhelmed or under pressure. Remember, small habits shape the team environment every day. In trauma-informed environments, even seemingly minor behaviors can influence emotional safety and focus. Number one, interrupting conversations, even casually, can break someone's focus and subtly signal that their time or contributions don't matter. Loud personal calls or oversharing private details can shift the emotional tone of the space. Nobody says anything because they don't know who to talk to or what to say, but it does shift the emotional tone, especially in shared offices or clinical environments where focus and calm are essential, right? Passive aggressive whispering, eye rolls, or the formation of visible cliques, whether intentional or not, sends messages of exclusion. These patterns slowly erode psychological safety and make it harder for teams to feel connected and steady. Crossing boundaries, like chatting for a long time without realizing that that person may have tons of work to do. Entering their workspace uninvited or repeatedly messaging after hours can make the environment feel intrusive or unpredictable. And in trauma-informed environments, consistency in respecting personal and professional boundaries is essential for helping you feel safe, regulated, and in control of your space and time. In trauma-informed workplaces, I believe that one of the most undervalued forms of respect is focus. Multitasking during conversations, even if it feels efficient, sends a message, you're not my priority. That breaks trust. And while sometimes we multitask to show that we're busy or pressed for time, like get the hint, it often sends the opposite message. It makes others feel dismissed. Giving someone your full attention, even for 60 seconds, right? Not looking at your watch, not looking at your phone, can be more impactful than an entire meeting filled with distraction. And later in the session, we will talk about how to be benevolently honest, how to kindly step away from a 20-minute hallway chat if you're under pressure, rather than suffering through it and feeling resentful. Unless you want to be there, it's okay to set that boundary. Interrupting, jumping in, or talking over someone also can create tension. Being fully present isn't just about being physically in the room, right? It's also how your posture, your tone, your eye contact communicate that you're engaged. And that kind of attention isn't just polite, it creates, again, safety. It tells the team, in our workplace, we slow down, we listen, we respect each other's focus. That's what allows people to relax, collaborate, and stay in the work long term. Before we dive into communication channels like email and phone, it's important to step back and consider how we physically show up in the workplace every day. Number one, smile and greet people warmly. Even small acknowledgments like, hello, good morning. A quick smile sends a clear message, which is people are seen and valued, right? Acknowledgement is a key part of building relationships and creating a positive atmosphere. Without it, people can feel invisible, literally unseen. Be on time for meetings and commitments, right? Show up on time for the day, the meeting, the call, whatever it is, follow through on tasks you've agreed to do, right? And if you fall short, take responsibility. Consistency builds trust. When people can count on you to be present and prepared, it stabilizes the emotional environment, especially in fast-moving, high-pressure teams. And then thirdly, respect professional tone. The words we choose and how we say them are part of our professional identity. This is something we're self-assessing daily, if not moment to moment. You probably already do this, right? Maybe one morning you are short or just a little rude in the tone to your roommate, partner, or spouse, and later you apologize to that person. That's self-awareness in action. That's exactly the kind of self-reflection we're talking about. Before a big meeting or job interview, we all take a moment to check our tone, our energy, and how our words might land. But doing it regularly is what sets you apart. For example, trade you for I. When possible, shift away from you statements that point blame and use I statements to express your experience. You don't listen becomes I don't feel heard. It's not what I would do, feels better than you're making a giant mistake. This simple shift, right, invites dialogue rather than defensiveness. Try flipping also your language. Start interactions on a positive foot. Instead of, can you believe the traffic this morning? Start the day by greeting your colleague, good morning, right? So that's a much better tone. Instead of, here's what you're doing wrong, try, this is where we could improve, or I'd like to see improvement there. A small flip makes a big difference. And then lastly, acknowledge others' presence. Cubicles and All the popular open offices have their own standards. Just because a cubicle has no door doesn't mean you can walk right in or pop over the divider. When someone is at their desk, whether in an open space, a cubicle, or an office with an open door, ask for their attention first, right? Don't interrupt without acknowledgement. Try, "Hi, Sue, do you have a minute?" Think of it as a verbal knock on the door if there is no door. The second biggest mistake people make in shared spaces is assuming more privacy than actually exists. Keep phone calls, music, podcasts, or any audio in your earbuds, right? Not on speaker. Avoid loud ringtones, alerts, notification sounds, whether it's talking on the phone or chatting with your colleagues or discussing sensitive topics. Be mindful of volume. Save truly private conversations for a more appropriate space. So these habits are really small, but they create the emotional architecture that supports everything else we'll talk about, especially communication and collaboration. Professional communication expectations. Use respectful, steady tone in all channels, spoken and written. Tone is the heartbeat of professional communication. Right? It conveys clarity, competence, and care. In every channel, whether it's face-to-face, over email, or on Slack, your tone should reflect steadiness and respect. Check how you sound before you hit send or speak, especially in fast-paced or emotional moments. A rushed message with no greeting or a quick "sure" that could read passive-aggressive can lead the wrong impression. Right? Be mindful of tone, even in short messages. Number 2, respond with reasonable time frame, even only to acknowledge. Even if you don't have a full answer, a timely acknowledgement goes a long way. People can feel overlooked or dismissed when messages go unanswered, especially in team chats, emails, or shared calendars. You don't have to respond instantly, but acknowledging a message in a timely manner shows reliability. Even a brief reply, like "thanks, I'll take a closer look," or "I'll reach out with an update tomorrow," helps the other person know that they've been heard. It prevents confusion and keeps things moving. Thirdly, match the tone to the situation, whether spoken or written. Start professional, then adjust respectfully if appropriate. Professionalism is your default setting, especially with people you don't know well. But tone can be adapted once relationships are established. Start clear and courteous, then shift depending on the channel and the nature of the relationship. For instance, a Teams chat with a colleague might be friendly, right, and brief. One outreach email to someone new should be polished and complete. Matching tone means asking, what does this situation call for, and responding accordingly and not automatically. And lastly, be mindful. Emails and texts carry tone even when unintended. And you've heard this from others, I'm sure. The silent signals in digital messages, pauses, punctuations, all caps carry meaning, whether we realize it or not. A few years ago, my daughter mentioned that a period at the end of a sentence can read as stern in texts. I had not heard this before, and it takes all of me to not finish sentences in a period in texting. But now I know, right? I know what it can mean, so I pick and choose. A lack of greeting can also feel abrupt, and the timing of your response, even the time of day, sends a message. Just because we can text or email quickly doesn't mean that we should. And when in doubt, pause before sending. If you're texting a coworker outside of work hours, consider whether it's necessary, and how it might land on the other side. When teams are under pressure for a long time, small habits can start to shift without anyone meaning to. Stress and exhaustion naturally make it harder to be patient, steady, and responsive. We don't always notice when tone gets sharper at work, when responsiveness slows down, or when small gestures of respect slip away. Right? It's human. Right? It's part of what happens when people are stretched thin. But what we normalize, we multiply. Right? I'll say it again. What we normalize, we multiply. If we allow disrespect, impatience, or inconsistency to become normal, even in small ways, it quietly reshapes the emotional safety of a team. Normalizing respect, predictability, and small daily kindnesses matter even more in high stress environments. It's not about perfection. It's about small resets day after day that rebuild trust and steadiness over time. So now you are the expert, all right? We've talked about presence, tone, and small daily habits. Now let's apply it. Imagine you've had a long day and an email shows up. It just says, need this done. No context, no greeting, just pressure. And in that moment, you have a choice: protect professionalism or add to the friction. Your response can regulate or escalate the moment. So you pause, you check in with yourself. Am I reacting emotionally or responding to move the work forward? Here's what a steady response could sound like. Hi, John. Hi, Jill. Thanks for sending this over. Just checking. Anything urgent I should prioritize? Let me know how I can best support next steps. This works because it's calm, it's forward focused, it keeps trust steady, and it doesn't shame the colleague. You're not matching the tone, you're modeling clarity. That's professionalism under pressure. Before we can talk about how to handle conflict well, it's important to understand why it happens in the first place. Right? Most conflict in the workplace doesn't come from bad intentions. Most. It comes from pressure, emotional overload, misunderstandings, or small unaddressed habits over time. First, stress and emotional overload can trigger reactivity. When people are stretched thin, tired, or under pressure, it becomes so much easier to snap, interrupt, or respond defensively without meaning to. Second, assumptions and misunderstandings escalate tension quickly. We often fill in missing information based on our own fears or frustrations, rather than seeking clarity first. Thirdly, a lack of awareness or rushed, careless communication can cause unintended friction. Tone that feels abrupt, ignoring small courtesies, or misreading urgency can all create tension without anyone meaning harm. And finally, when small acts of incivility go unaddressed, like interruptions, passive tone, or dismissive, anything, they build emotional distance over time, making it harder to collaborate when it matters most. Most workplace conflict isn't about bad people. It's about bad pressure or bad habits under stress. And our job is to interrupt that cycle before it grows. You've just rolled out a new EMR template to streamline partner notification data entry after STI testing. It's your daily debrief. A colleague snaps, arms folded. This extra screen is just slowing me down. I'm here seeing 10 patients before lunch. Why add more clicks? So how would you respond in that moment, to protect professionalism, maintain data quality, and keep the team moving? This is happening during your daily debrief. So when everybody's already tired, but needs to align on what worked and what didn't today, it's natural for frustration to surface in that setting. So you take a steady breath. You remind yourself that the concern is about time and efficiency, not a personal attack. You might say, I hear you. Tomorrow's schedule is packed. Let's run the template for 2 days as is, and then regroup quickly to gather the feedback so that to see where we can streamline together. This keeps data quality intact while honoring their workload, right? It invites them into a leadership role. By acknowledging both their reality and the project's goals, you model emotional steadiness and protect the integrity on the team's work. Here's another scenario. During a chart review time, you notice a colleague's notes repeatedly omit key follow-up instructions for high-risk patients. You pull them aside and say, I've seen several charts today where the next step plan isn't clear. That puts our patients at risk. Can we talk about how to tighten up your documentation? How would you deliver that feedback in a way that maintains trust, shows respect, and protects patient care? Begin by reminding them that you both share the same commitment to keep patients safe and on the right care path. Rather than calling it out in front of the whole team, you might pull them aside privately, right? After a chart review closes, but before they leave. Say, I noticed that in Maria's chart, we didn't document her referral date. I'm worried her follow-up might slip. Can we go over a quick template to make sure it's captured? Frame it as a joint problem-solving opportunity. How can I help you streamline this? Would a checklist or a quick template not be useful? Then end with genuine appreciation. You can say something like, you bring a high level of care to your work, and your thorough work really makes a difference. This tweak will help ensure every patient gets the care they need. By giving feedback calmly, with respect, and offering a solution, you reinforce your professional relationship and keep patient care front and center. So, even with experience, good intentions, or strong values, we all hit moments when we are unsure how to respond. A colleague says something sharp, a situation turns unexpectedly tense, or we just feel off balance and unsure what to say next. This 5-step process helps us navigate those moments with steadiness, especially when our usual instincts like people pleasing, shutting down, or reacting impulsively don't actually move the conversation forward. So this 5-step process is especially effective in trauma-informed environments because it slows our reactions and invites thoughtful action. Practicing it over time also strengthens our ability to pause, assess, and respond with clarity. It becomes a habit of steady thinking. What I love most personally is that this approach gives me and us permission to be honest and moves past fear of conflict. It's the opposite of fight or flight. I think of it as re-regulation, a reset that returns us to calm, clear decision-making. It mirrors how we manage our own triggers, right? Pause, gain perspective, and choose our next move. And remember, as we practice each step, we carve a deeper neurological groove, and that groove becomes stronger even under pressure. So the first step is you identify who's directly involved or indirectly impacted. What's happening? What are people feeling? Consider the ripple effects, even those 1 or 2 degrees removed. And then the second step is outline. Name your gut reaction, what you really want to do, and other possible solutions. Include options you won't choose just to notice what you're tempted to do. And then the third step is you evaluate. We examine each solution and ask, how does this affect each person in step 1? What feels constructive versus reactive? Step 4, choose. Here we decide on the best solution, and ideally the solution that you choose will produce the most favorable outcomes for everyone involved, right? Ideally also, this solution also builds or grows the relationships among the people involved. That's the key. And the final step is refine. Is there a small shift that would strengthen your choice before you act? So personally, I write each step down. Like I do this before I have to write tricky emails, when I need clarity. I name who's involved, outline my options, evaluate them, and then choose one and refine it just before acting. Writing slows me down, so it helps me move forward with intention, right? This process isn't just about avoiding conflict. It's about building confidence so that you are not afraid to resolve conflicts and face them. Now, let's apply 5-step process to the EMR workflow example, the scenario that we discussed earlier. So the first step, identify. You notice your colleagues' frustration during the daily debrief. Their tone and body language signal that they're not happy, that the new workflow feels overwhelming under current workload pressure. And then step 2 is you quickly outline your possible responses. You could defend the template aggressively. You could snap back. It's not like you can't, right? Naming it helps us avoid reacting impulsively. You could also stay silent and avoid conflict if that's your default. Or you could propose a solution that validates their concerns while protecting the project's integrity. The third step, evaluate. You evaluate the options, right? Defending risks escalating tension, right? Staying silent, though, risks resentment on your end and eroding trust. Proposing a collaborative next step protects both efficiency and teamwork. The fourth step, choose. You validate your colleagues' concerns and propose a short 2-day pilot. Let's run it for 2 days as it is, then regroup for quick feedback. This keeps the team engaged and gives you real feedback for improvement without reacting emotionally. And then the last step, you refine. After 2 days, you check in with the staff. What worked? What didn't? You refine the EMR fields based on their feedback, which strengthens the final product anyway and keeps the trust intact, right? When we walk people through a thoughtful, low-pressure process like this, we're not just managing conflict, we're building trust and skill in real time. And it doesn't just work in the heart of the moment. It also helps before you act. Like I talked about before, before I have to write emails. Like when a colleague asks for feedback, or you're thinking, oh my gosh, that presentation was a disaster. I don't think she gets why, right? And before you decide to send that email, the process gives you space to pause and assess so that your next move, whether now or later, align your intentions, thinking, and actions of whole groups. Now that we've walked through the 5-step process for handling difficult situations, I want to show you how it naturally aligns with a quality improvement cycle you already know very well, the PDSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act. Both approaches emphasize pausing, acting intentionally, and refining based on real-world feedback instead of reacting impulsively. Step 1, identify connects to plan. We start by understanding the situation and considering everyone involved before acting. Outline connects to do. We explore possible solutions and move forward with a thoughtful action plan, not rushing, but committing to a first step. Step 3, you evaluate, connects to study. Just like PDSA study phase, we evaluate carefully. What worked, what didn't, where were our actions respectful, practical, or helpful. Step 4, choose, connects to act. After evaluation, we choose adjustments honestly and with integrity. involving, everyone, improving strategies, not just repeating old habits. Step 4 is about authenticity, honesty, choosing a solution that reflects who you are and how you lead. And then last step, refine, connects to adjust and plan next cycle. We recognize that growth and improvement are continuous. Each cycle of feedback, adjustment, and planning helps strengthen the team over time. Refinement isn't just fixing, it's sharing insight and building the relationship from that moment forward. Professionalism, teamwork, and conflict resolution aren't about being flawless. That's not what I'm saying. They're about being willing to step back, learn, and keep getting better. Before we close today, I want to touch on one more topic that affects how teams work together, especially in high stress environments like public health, which is generational differences. Many teams today include colleagues across 3, 4, even 5 generations. And with that comes wide range of communication styles, values, and expectations. Right? This next section is not about labeling anyone. It's about noticing patterns that helps us build stronger connections at work. Before we dive into this, I want to acknowledge that this chart is adapted from Mind Tools, a leadership workplace development organization. You can see their source at the bottom. It's important to remember generational differences are patterns, not rigid boxes. So people are individuals first. These traits are general trends, but everyone brings their own lived experiences to the table. So look at different core values and work ethic. If you scan across the top row, you can see how work values shift over time. Older generations might focus more on duty, loyalty, structure. Younger generations might value authenticity, flexibility, creativity. It's not that one is better or worse. It's just different starting points for how people approach their work. So if you look about halfway down, communication preferences, you'll see some big shifts too. Some people still feel most comfortable with formal emails or written memos for work. Others are quicker with texts or messages. A lot of misunderstandings at work happen simply because people default to their own style without realizing that others might need something different to feel respected or heard. And then near the bottom, you'll see feedback preferences. Some grew up in workplaces where no news was good news. If your boss wasn't yelling at you, you were doing fine. Others grew up expecting real-time feedback, quick check-ins, little nudges, lots of touch points. Without talking about this, it's easy for people to misread each other. So when we talk about generational issues, it's not about labeling people. It's about understanding that different life experiences shape how people work, talk, and expect to be treated. And when we know that, we can adjust, not because we have to, but because it helps everyone work better together. This slide shows the difference between generalizing and stereotyping and why it matters when we're talking about working across generations or really any kind of difference. Generalizing is about noticing a characteristic, right, that's often true for a group, but recognizing that not every individual will match that pattern. It follows something called the 80-20 rule. Usually about 80% might share a trait, but there's also 20% chance that who don't. Generalization can be helpful because they let you anticipate possible needs and communication styles, but they're only a starting point, never a certainty about somebody. For example, you might notice that a lot of younger colleagues are more comfortable, right? Like we talked about, using real-time messaging apps for quicker communication, while older colleagues might prefer email or even a phone call, right? My daughter, same daughter, asked me if I could do an etiquette video on how to leave a voicemail because that generation never had to leave voicemails. Even phone calls are not really a thing. Recognizing that pattern helps you adapt, but it doesn't mean you assume everyone under 30 hates formal communication or that everyone over 60 dislikes technology. You stay flexible and check in person by person. Stereotyping happens when we stop checking. It's when we take one idea and apply it rigidly to everyone without giving individuals a chance to show who they are. And often, stereotypes lean negative, creating barriers instead of building bridges. Generalizations can help you prepare to be respectful of different styles that you just saw, but good workplace leadership means respecting the person in front of you, not just the group they belong to. Curiosity always serves us better than assumptions. This slide is really just a recap. Nothing new here because we've, already covered it all. If these 5 ideas sound familiar, that's intentional. I did it on purpose. They've been woven through everything we've talked about because they are at the heart of working well across styles, roles, and generations. Show respect. You've already seen how respect underpins every interaction, especially when someone's communication or behavior differs from your own. Be flexible. We talked earlier about how your willingness to just be flexible, just a little, can help others thrive. That's how we create space for different strengths to show up. Avoid stereotypes, just like what we just covered. We covered this in depth, so, generalization, remember, can guide you, but assumptions shut the door. So keep choosing curiosity instead. Number 4, communicate clearly. This one's come up again and again with the 5, right? The 5-step. Relationships. People don't have to be the same, but they do have to trust each other. So if you're wondering how to bring what we've covered into your daily work, these 5 are your starting points besides the 5-step process. Pick just one for tomorrow, for the rest of the week. In trauma-informed workplaces, even in small moments, how we communicate, how we handle tension, how we support one another can shape the larger environment. You play a part in that every day. So I hope that something from today helps you feel a little bit more equipped, perhaps more steady, or simply more aware as you move through your work. And thank you for being here today, and thank you for what you do for our community and also for the way you do it. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minju. That was awesome. I want to give folks a little bit of a chance to ask any questions you might have. Um, and I just want to acknowledge, Minju, when you asked the reflection question about what people can do to boost connections in the workplace, form connections, people had some really, really good ideas, some of which you touched on. While people are putting in any questions in the chat, I just want to read through some of y'all's really, really good um, reflections. So we have greet everyone with a smile, learn the names of all my coworkers, telling others you appreciate working with them, cover someone so they can take a break. Like all these little things are perfect. Practice active listening. Ask your coworkers how they are and generally listen when they tell you. Oh, it's so easy to skip over that. Say good morning to everyone before they start the day. Going to other levels of a building if you work in a big building to say hi to people. Practice kindness versus niceness, authenticity, not showing favoritism. not interrupting, spend more time actively and patiently listening. Ooh, listening to understand instead of listening to respond or defend. These are all so, so, so good. Um,
I wish there was a way if we could capture this so I could just read it for my own motivation. You know,
I think that since we're recording this, it saves the chat. I can send it to you.
that would be great. I'm just reading practice kindness versus niceness, authenticity, not showing favoritism. I love this. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, y'all feel free to put any questions or thoughts in the chats that you have. I know working in healthcare brings a lot of its own unique challenges, and like I feel like your examples with the EMR especially really spoke to that. I remember having a lot of like really interpersonal conflicts when it comes to anything new, but especially when it comes to like any change in the EMR or how we do charting or any processes. It's just little things can become so big. And so, yeah, thank you for touching on things like that.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll just wait a couple of minutes for any questions to come in, but thank y'all so much for being here today.
I don't have a question, just a comment
Mhm.
that I can tell you that the team that you work with makes all the difference in the world. And knowing that you've got people that you work around that are giving you some added support because, some days are really hard. And to know that you're not in it by yourself, that you have these other people around you that are kind of in it with you and helping hold each other up makes a big difference in not dreading coming to work, that the work is going to be hard, but these people are going to, do it with me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, that's so true.
That's so true. We don't often talk about how much of our life we spend at work, right? We spend more hours at work in some ways than with our loved ones. And all the things that we think about bringing to our best selves for our loved ones. Imagine just doing some of that at work. I think it could, if we just even just do a little bit, I think then what the difference is then is that people will feel less isolated, like you said, less lonely, more like we're doing all this together. And I'm going to a workplace where I know that I can be supported and that I am part of this team. And that makes a huge difference in personal happiness.
Mhm.
That you can, that it adds value to your life. And I think that it's so important to not to say that that's not a big thing because it's a huge part of being happy at work.
We can do hard work anywhere, but we
Exactly.
choose to do it where we are mostly because of the people that we get to do that work with.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's so true. I've stayed in a very low paying job for probably way too long because I loved my coworkers. So it really, yeah, it really means a lot. Thank you all for your comments in the chat. And just to speak it out loud, there's some people wanting to share this presentation with their colleagues because they really enjoyed it. We did record this today, and I'll be sending it over to Marika. So then I know it eventually makes its way onto the Primary Care Learning Collaborative like archive page, so y'all be able to access it. Um, you have a question from Christine. First, I need you to be my therapist because your voice and the message is so soothing. That's to you, Minju. Is there a way to share with people or training for organizations? I think, are you talking about this specific talk, Christine?
So I'll jump in and answer that. Hi, everyone. My name's Kara Bergronick. I'm the director of the Midwest Trauma Informed Training Center at HCET. This talk will be available not only on the Department of Health's website for those folks, but also on the HCET YouTube page. So anyone can share this talk and access it. Also, Minju does do her own consulting. So if you're looking for a deeper dive or ongoing things, you can certainly contact her for more. And Minja, if you want to throw your stuff in the chat, you can feel free so people can access you or talk about it.
Yes, I'm very flattered that you found my cold, soothing voice very soothing. It must have been the cough drop, so it's working. So thank you. That was very kind. But yes, if you have any questions or you just want to talk about a situation or if you want to do a coaching or consulting, feel free to just email me. I think it's what I'm sorry, my cold head.
I just put your Gmail in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. And then there's a website, empoweretiquette.com, and you can reach me by phone or by email. But thank you, Christine.
I'll put the website in the chat too. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here today. Again, look out for this recording on the HCET YouTube page. We have a lot of our trainings recorded up there to be viewed by anyone. And then also, if you're part of the Primary Care Learning Collaborative, it will be on that page of archived trainings. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Minju, for being here. And thank you, everyone, for your attention today.
Thank you, Adele.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.